In 1989, the Socialist Federal Republic of Yugoslavia was falling apart, for various reasons that are better left for later. Yugoslavia was beginning to fracture, and in 1991, Slovenia and Croatia declared independence from the rest of Yugoslavia. Slobodan Milosevic, the president of Serbia, didn't like this one bit, and sent the Yugoslav army in to sort them out. The Yugoslav army fought a war against Slovenia for 10 days, after which they pulled out, planned a reoffensive that would surely succeed, but decided not to go through with it because they didn't care that much about Slovenia. Croatia, on the other hand, was much more important. In 1992, Bosnia also declared independence, and the wars in Croatia and Bosnia would not end until 1995. War crimes were committed by everyone. Militias and paramilitary groups blurred the lines between soldiers and non-combatants, and the reasons for the conflicts began to get muddled into a vague mess of ethnic and national pride. And that's really the whole crux of this matter. Nationality. You have all these countries that used to sort of have individuality before they became Yugoslavia, but before they were Yugoslavia, they were subject nations to other empires for centuries. So most of them have no recent history to really pull from. So they have to reinvent their senses of national pride. One way they do so is by turning to folk music, singing and playing music in the way they had for centuries. Also, this was around the time when techno music was popular. This is turbo folk. As far as I can tell, the genre started sometime in the mid-80s, but most of the songs that people actually know about are from between 1992 and 1995, right in the middle of both the Croatian and Bosnian wars of independence. By the way, the word turbo folk was coined by a guy who goes by Rambo Amadeus, and that's about the least insane thing about this genre. Turbo folk isn't the only genre in Yugoslavia, and I will mention a few songs that are more like actual folk music or rock and roll, but turbo folk is easily one of the most insane genres on earth, so I need to talk about it for a little while here. Most of these performers are under a Serbian record label called Superton. They have a YouTube channel with most of the songs they've ever published, and also some amazing music videos. Serbia, Bosnia, and Croatia all have their own unique style of turbo folk. Serbian turbo folk in general uses a lot of accordions or harmoniki. Songs are often sung with lots of sustained notes and ululation, sort of like Greek singing. The subject matter of Serbian turbo folk is usually about being at war with a certain country, how they don't like a certain country, how Serbians are some sort of heavenly people, or just about being alcoholics. Bosnian turbo folk varies wildly, from like Western style electric guitar and rock and roll to like very Eastern Turkish baglamas and like Islamic prayer chants with some simple percussion. The subject matter of Bosnian turbo folk is usually about God or being Muslims, or how Bosnia is the greatest, or how everybody loves Bosnia and nobody will take Bosnia from us because we love Bosnia so much and our love for Bosnia will stop anyone from taking Bosnia from us. I love Bosnia. And Croatian music. I honestly can't find like any Croatian turbo folk. The only music that even came close was usually like unit anthems or this fucking guy just yelling. Maybe it's because I'm searching in English. Maybe if I spoke Serbo-Croatian, I'd be able to search more specifically and find some Croatian turbo folk. But this is the best I got. Of course, these are broad generalizations. Some of the worst songs of the genre tend to blend together, as they are usually just rapid-fire electric farts while somebody vaguely keeps rhythm with some nationalistic tripe. With the general stuff out of the way, let's get specific here. Let's take a look at some performers. This is Mirko Pajcin, better known by his stage name Baja Malik Ninja. He sings about Serbian Krajina and how Bosnia and Croatia should fuck off. His music videos usually feature him sitting at a dinner table with a bunch of other people who look like they want to be literally anywhere else, while Baja himself looks like he's either squinting to read his lyrics on a teleprompter or that the lights are too bright. Baja is the kind of asshole who named one of his albums War and Peace. I really can't imagine a more arrogant thing to do. He's actually had a decently successful career spanning back to 1991. I wouldn't say he's mainstream, even in Serbia, as all the Serbs I've talked to have never heard of him, but he still does live performances even today. He's also a pretty blatant plagiarist, as he's stolen melodies from lots of different artists, including the Rolling Stones. Why the fuck would you steal the riff from Satisfaction? That's such a stupid thing to do. He also stole a melody from Operation Winback on the N64? Please, somebody tell me, is this just a default hardware or software setting on an old keyboard or program from the early 2000s? Or did he actually steal this from an N64 game? Please, somebody let me know. Also, the album cover that song is from looks like he's riding a motorcycle to get away from his ugly face. Baja's songs, to his credit, are not all about the wars or about nationalism. A fair amount are just about gambling, alcoholism, and generally being a loser. So Baja is a pretty good artist, 6 out of 5. Next we've got Dino Merlin, whose real name is impossible to pronounce. Edin Dervishalidovic? Dervishalidovic? Dino comes from Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia. Dino Merlin has stolen so much music that I'd have to make an entire video series detailing all of his instances of plagiarism. I love this guy. This is Rodoljub Vulovic Roki. I probably mispronounced all of that. He's a nice old man who sings some legitimately decent songs. A fair amount of them aren't even that nationalist and can just apply to war in general. He sings a lot of love songs outside of his turbo folk, if you can really even call his slow, sort of methodical beat poetry style of singing turbo folk. It might just classify as normal folk. Also, he has a worse tooth gap than I do, so looking at him makes me feel a bit less self-conscious. He is a professor, and just recently he retired from being a school commissioner.
Prije mjesec dana javljam se jedan Amerikanac Thomas Weber sa Floride, koji prvo na engleskom, pa mu onda Facebook prevodi na srpski, kaže ovako: Gospodine Vuloviću, prvi put kada sam čuo vaše 3 pjesme, doživio sam veliku emociju, iako nisam znao ni jednu jedinu riječ. Međutim, kad mi je moj kolega preveo te 3 pjesme, onda sam definitivno postao vaš fan.
All around, he's a pretty cool dude, and I hope he never does anything fucked up, because I like him so much I'd be seriously bummed out. Originally, I was going to analyze 3 songs, but 2 of them had to be cut, so without any further ado, here is one song, Oi Alia Alio. The song opens up on a lazy repeating note that's then followed by synthesized farts and shitty guitars. The instruments never get better in the song or even change melodies. It's just these 3 awful digital instruments playing the same tunes through the whole song. But the instruments aren't what I like about this one. It's how horrible these lyrics are. Let me give you some background. After Croatia split off from Yugoslavia in 1991, a horrible war broke out. Bosnia wanted to avoid that. so they split off from Yugoslavia the following year, causing a horrible war to break out. It was a good idea at the time. The president of Bosnia was Alija Izetbegović, and this song is nothing but insults directed to him and Bosnia. The insults start pretty tame. They talk about how Bosnia's allies will one day betray them. They call Alija a and then they talk about how small and fragile Bosnia is. The chorus is this chant-like lyric. This line is an insult towards Bosnians as a people rather than Alija himself. The fertile lands of Posavina were depopulated from evacuations and massacres that occurred in the early days of the war, and calling Bosniak Muslims Turks was a pretty common insult at the time. This line is thumbing the nose at Bosnians while making light of a tragedy, so that's pretty bad on its own, but then you have shit like this. I mean, this is just vile. It's insulting a religion and an awful famine at the same time. The idea that someone thought of this joke and then included it in their song is so awful that it's actually hilarious to me. I wanted to analyze this song because it's so darkly comedic. The sheer absurdity of this hatred just makes me laugh, but at the same time it's so deeply concerning. It's so pointless. If you follow the song, the singer's views are kind of vague. I mean, it's clear he hates Alija and Bosnia, but why? Because they wanted independence? Over the course of the wars in Yugoslavia, everyone's goals got more and more vague. Originally, the wars were because local Serb populations wanted to stay in Yugoslavia, but the states they lived in wanted to leave. So the states split against the will of the Serbs feel helpless because voting wouldn't help, because the Serbs were minorities. Big ones, but still minorities, and they just wouldn't be able to shift the balance of votes to be in favor of staying in Yugoslavia. In 1991, when Croatia left Yugoslavia, its president, Franjo Tudjman, claimed that Croatia had the right to declare its independence. Serbia's president, Slobodan Milosevic, said that the Serbs living in Croatia also had this right. So when Bosnia declared its independence the following year, the same exact thing happened, almost with the same timing. Bosnia holds a referendum, the Serbs claim it's unfair because their votes are ultimately meaningless, Bosnia gains independence, the Serbs in Bosnia declare themselves a state, and war breaks out. But as these wars dragged on, the goal got confused. It steadily stopped being about leaving Yugoslavia. It steadily stopped being about countries altogether. These ethnicities and religions who had lived in peace for years and years were now mortal enemies, and thousands of innocents were killed because they were simply the same group of people as the enemy, whatever that meant. Villages were burned and people were slaughtered for no reason, and this song is a perfect reflection of the completely nonsensical hatred that burned Yugoslavia to ashes. Great song, 10 out of 10.